Henry's Prize by John Storrs. The Christmas songs had all been sung. The last cups of eggnog had all been drunk. The little tree lights had all been turned off for nearly 3 weeks, but something was undone: the election of the next Santa. The sunset had said its last goodbye and had gone to his darkened room to cry alone. Even the night signs cried their tears that made the streets a mirror of loneliness. But still the sunrise rest home sign went off and on, because there was a short in one of its lights. Mrs. Avalon was sitting quietly in her wheelchair and looking at the old Texaco sign across the street. She wondered what the color of the 1928 Ford was going to be. She felt Henry's arms around her. "Silly me, they're always black." And she must have said it a little too loudly. "That's it, in you go." With that rough announcement, Nurse Washington unlocked the wheelchair. Hatefully and uncaring, the nurse opened the screen door with one hand and rolled the chair into the dark hall with the other. This was done with such speed and force that Mrs. Avalon was afraid and she would be thrown onto the whole floor. She managed to catch her balance, but the rest of the night Mrs. Avalon's head hurt. Nurse Washington left her in the long hall with one mean laugh and said, "Find your own room." Then she royally walked away, but Mrs. Avalon just sat there for a moment in disbelief. Mrs. Avalon slowly moved down the long hall. Her hands were so arthritic that she could only use the palms to go a few inches at a time. She passed rooms, lonely rooms, with doors closed to keep the dying unseen. Only the numbers on the doors, not the half-written names on the little cards, showed Mrs. Avalon to her room. Room to room, heart to beating heart, and number to antiseptic number. She went a few inches at a time. At least her door was open, so Mrs. Avalon didn't have to think how it could be opened. When the door was closed by her foot, Henry was alive again and welcomed her home. "Nan, you are home," Henry says with a hug and a kiss. Then he puts a small box into her hands. His smile is twice the size of their cat looking out the window at a gourmet dinner. "What's this?" asked Nan. "It's one of a kind. Colonel Jake Rupert sent it. Please, Nan, you open it." She hurriedly opens it and takes out a baseball. Henry's eyes are like child's eyes at Christmas time, getting what he asked Santa. "See, Nan? That's where Hort signed it." Now he points to scrolls. "There's Lazzari, and there's Dugan. Look at the catcher, Collins." Nan looks at Henry and thinks to herself of how much kindness of others means in their lives. "Nan, I can't believe it. There are Combs and Koenig," but Henry could not say the last names on the baseball because his voice was filled with tears. Nan gives Henry kisses, caring. "We will always keep it on the night table." She lovingly puts Henry's prized baseball on the night table. The ball rolled off onto the floor and under the bed. Nurse Washington was on duty the next morning. She always wanted the morning shift, and she found Mrs. Avalon dead in wheelchair number 51. As she closed the door, she said, "Ho, ho, let's see what Santa has left me today." All she could find was a 10 in a candy box, 66 cents in a change purse, and gold earrings in an old red box. Then, walking out the door, the nurse said, "Poor Santa." 3 days had passed when Mrs. Avalon's nephew came running into the Sunrise Rest Home and told Nurse Washington that he had come to pick up his aunt's things. In 2 minutes the orderly had brought out 2 boxes and placed them on the hall floor. The nephew did not care the way he looked. Like a spoiled brat, he sat on the just-cleaned floor and angrily tore open the boxes. Quickly, Mrs. Avalon's clothes were piled high, and pictures and holiday cards, lovingly saved, scattered all over the hall. When he looked up, he looked like a bad boy who had just gotten switches from Santa. "Where's the baseball?" he screamed. "Come to think, I did throw out an old baseball. It's in the dump by now." Then Nurse Washington asked, "Was it worth something?" With lost dollars, tears, Mrs. Avalon's nephew snapped back, "Does Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig mean anything to you?" That night, an 8-year-old boy sat in his bed playing catch with an old baseball that he had found, walking home from school 2 days before. The boy was make-believing that he was playing in a great game, but really, he was playing catch with the angels. He carefully placed Henry's prized baseball on his desk. He turned out the lights and dreamed. This time, the baseball didn't roll away.